All right. Hi, good morning, everyone. Chris Peterson here, Jackie Bados.
Hi.
We are convening the June 11th, 2021 recurring meeting of the short-term ordinance work group. Appreciate everybody for joining today. Looks like we've got Bruce, Ron, Jackie, Liz, Mike, Tom, and me. So appreciate everybody joining. We do have a hard stop for another meeting we've got to roll into. So Tom, you want to just give us a quick review of where we stood, where we finished off?
Yeah, sorry, let me find my notes. I think we're down into the conduct and enforcement area. A quick note for the group is it did get sent out to the town attorney for legal opinion, and kind of getting his notes, and Bruce, your questions that you had, we sent off to him as well. We're waiting for those responses. So definitely, I would say by the next time we meet, we should have that for kind of review and everything.
Great. Okay. Just for the teams. This is probably, I don't, this is just somewhat of my perspective. You know, right now things down at HQ there on Hot Meadow Street are jamming with various competing priorities. All good, you know, coming out of the budget, and hence what our meeting is at 9 o'clock today. So there's just limited capacity for sort of bandwidth of picking up small pieces of projects, and certainly town attorney knows that we're, to us, we feel that we're just as important as everybody. Our work is just as important as everybody else's is, but we're just kind of in the queue. So I appreciate everyone's patience. No one wants to get this done and over with more than I do. So I appreciate you guys. Just for Ron and Liz's, Bruce, Bruce had bubbled up a couple of questions. You guys may or may not have. They were questions, but also just some thoughts. So we thought there was some good, at least worthy of some dialogue. So we put those questions in front, along with our most recent revised packet. We put that in front of the town attorney. So that's basically what we're waiting to come back on. Jackie, do you have any comments or thoughts you want to share?
No, I just wanted to make sure that Bruce knew that his comments were being reviewed. So
yeah,
I think that would be great, and that'll be very helpful. So thanks, Bruce.
Can I ask, are those the ones that Bruce emailed?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Liz.
Yeah. All right. Because I was wondering too about that 100-foot range. That question there about notifying neighbors. Where does the range start? Is it from the center of the property? Like, is it a radius from the middle? Or maybe it's not the time to ask, but I didn't even know what that meant. How to judge the 100 feet.
I would think from the limits of the property. Otherwise, if you have a large property, you wouldn't even get outside of it.
Mike is nodding.
Ron
Okay.
nailed it. Beat me to it. Edge of the property, 100 feet around it.
Okay.
Fair enough. Mike, we'll go through this quick. I mean, that's actually, seeing as, it's a bit difficult because I think you guys have heard my comments in the past that where we are at 7C? Is that where it is? Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
These are, to a certain extent, I feel we should not monkey around with these too much because, again, we're trying to keep consistent. So I think this meeting is gonna be quick. We're wrapping up. So I want to get the draft back from Bob. I don't think I don't believe in value of pushing through a bunch of this stuff if there's something coming back from the town attorney that's going to change the tenor and tone of the following work that we haven't done yet.
Right.
So, Mike, do you have any comments that as you've been sort of floating around town hall and looking at this and talking with anybody, or any feedback at all you want to share on some perspective we should be focusing on?
No, but if we're going with just where we're leaving off with conduct and enforcement, I mean, a lot of that is we grabbed it from other ordinances or regulations.
Right.
So, and we're trying to stick with measurable things such as, the noise, put a level on the noise. Events, we've heard about the events. We don't have to talk about the events today. Just basically say indoor, outdoor, off the table. You can't have an event if you have a short-term rental. And then when you get into the enforcement, that it mirrors the water shortage ordinance, the stormwater ordinance, the procedure of appeals, fines, etc. I don't know, Tom, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that was kind of it. The appeal section itself is just basically copy and pasted from other ordinances passed and approved by the town attorney. And then the fines is working with Mike. We identified the right state statute that those go with as well.
Thank you.
There is one thing that, sorry, going back to the definition section, the word event was added as a definition by recommendation from the town manager, just kind of saying we do say you can't have an event, but we didn't describe what an event might be. So we added a definition in section 2 of what an event would be. So we could always go back and kind of make sure that the group agrees with that definition.
Okay, I see 2I. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So I don't want to spend too much time this morning, other than we haven't had just the general question to pose to anybody. Liz, you missed the meeting last time. Anybody have any following on comments? I mean, again, I think I don't really want to walk through the rest of this document today, frankly, and try to pull it apart because it's already accepted practice until Bobby D brings his responses back to the nuts and bolts of what we have worked on, unless somebody has a real burning desire to sit here and go through that section.
I'd like to bring up one item that I guess we kind of went through very early. I don't know how the decision was made, but it was competing decisions, I'm sure. That's regarding the primary residence requirement. And I guess I'm looking at it two different ways. There's two competing things we're trying to achieve with this. One is obviously you don't want an adverse impact on the local neighborhoods, and people don't want to see short-term rental houses or facilities, whatever, in their neighborhood become an eyesore and a pain for the neighborhood. However, I think that's addressed with all the requirements that, things that we're going through now, the conduct and the safety and all of that are pretty strong to protect the integrity of the neighborhood if there's bad actors in that, and the permits can be revoked. So the other aspect is what are the property owners and how are we addressing their free use of the property, because it is their property. And for the most part, when you own property, you do have to contend with requirements of where you purchased it, but you should have pretty open ability to use your property to its best use. And the reason I bring that up is because there's going to be several instances where there's going to be people with properties that would like to use them as short-term rentals. And if we make them requirement of residency, they won't be able to. And those are like one that Liz brought up. If you inherited a property and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with it, and you have the opportunity maybe to cover some of your tax money and make some money on it for short-term periods, you wouldn't be the resident of it. There may be people transitioning, leaving the state, not that many people leaving Connecticut for any reason, but maybe they want to be able to be moving out of Connecticut and living someplace else, have this property and be able to get some income on it. And there's also people that have purchased properties for long-term rentals, and they're not seeing the market at that point. Maybe they can't get the long-term rentals, but there's opportunity for short-term rentals. Why would they be barred from doing that because they're not residents of it? And there are, I guess, the other downside that I've seen in communities. I don't think it's an issue for Simsbury, but there have been highly desirable vacation areas where people go out and purchase all kinds of properties, taking them off the market in ski areas and so forth, where they doesn't leave room for the local people to have long-term rentals because they're all being used up for short-term rentals. I don't see that as an issue here. So I guess I think with the two different competing requirements, the property owners and the neighborhoods, I feel the neighborhoods are being addressed with the conduct requirements and all the other safeguards, and that we should be able to open up the property owners to have the ability to not have to be permanent residents to lease there for short-term rentals. And I go back to my experiences with short-term rentals, and every one that I've used, it's been for a week or maybe a long weekend, and it was clearly not, the owners were not residents of these properties. They're pretty stripped down, very clean. If you think about it, if you wanted to turn your house and make money on a Memorial Day weekend because you're going to travel someplace, the effort you would have to go through, I know my house, to declutter it, to make it something useful, desirable for a short-term tenant to come in there and get all your stuff that you wouldn't want people messing with. I think by requiring that primary residence, it's going to really cut down on the ability and the availability of these types of properties in Simsbury. I guess that's my pitch for making that, changing that item 2E.
So your intention, so Ron, you say that we've gone too far, you're saying, with the requirement is becoming too
Yes.
restrictive, just to sort of sum that up?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, I gave you like 4 different types of properties that I felt that would be, that people would have the ownership and be in a position where they wouldn't be long-term, where they wouldn't be their primary residence and still want to be able to use this short-term rental to make some income. And I think the two competing requirements we have to watch for are the integrity of the neighborhoods and not creating nuisances for these, which I think the conduct rules and so forth do. And then, as the citizens of the town that own properties should have a fairly open ability to use their properties for what they want, as long as it's in the character and the use of the neighborhoods they're in.
Ron, I might be able to address that for you. So there is the definition of the primary residence, only because in I gotta count my Roman numerals, 4A2, the how to apply for like the application.
Yeah.
We have a list of all owners and primary. We could put a and or maybe, so an and or primary residence of the property, because that'll touch the definition 2B and 2E. We just kind of wanted people on the permit, just kind of who is living there and who kind of has. I don't think anywhere else in the ordinance it says primary residence only. I think if it did, that was kind of a holdover from one of our original drafts where
Yes.
afterwards we talked about kind of eliminating that part.
Never mind. I apologize.
It's
I
okay.
do remember it early on, and I saw that in there, and I was trying to find where it was, and I didn't want to let that slide. Okay, well, if it doesn't require it, then
Any other observations from the team here, general, without rewriting the ordinance?
Bruce?
Yes, actually, I thought when I created those 5 points in my summary of a couple weeks ago, my intention there was to get everything I had, it occurred to me that we ought to take a look at before we close this out. Just this morning, I noticed something else that I can't resist bringing up under enforcement. And then more specifically, the appeals section, paragraph 10. It refers to the hearing officer, but it doesn't say who the hearing officer is. So I think something got missed when this was clipped out of some other regulation.
I thought, Mike, didn't we talk about that
Yeah,
aspect of hearings?
So the hearing officer, there's 3 hearing officers appointed by the Board of Selectmen, that all citation appeals under 7-152.6 are appealed to. So it applies to not just this, it would be this ordinance, it'd be like when the zoning officer issues a fine, when the blight officer issues a fine, it's the same group of 3 people that serve as the hearing officers.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I think it needs to be here very clearly. That's who the hearing officers are, as identified in other, town ordinances or something.
So
Like,
what's the value? I mean, your Bruce, so that, I mean, you don't think there is enough? So you want them by name? I mean, how do you?
no, it doesn't say, it just says hearing officer. Out of the blue, it doesn't identify who serves as the hearing officer.
So you want
you're
them by
appealing to.
position?
No, I think it needs to, as Mike's explanation is that there's currently an ordinance that identifies this process for appeals. There's a panel of 3 to be selected from, they're appointed by the Board of Selectmen and all that stuff. That doesn't all have to be in here, but something specific about who the, I think it sort of stands out as where we've made carefully identified for definition a variety of roles that come up in our 8 pages of draft material. That we get to the last page, last 2 paragraphs, we're talking about a hearing officer with no earlier reference to who the hearing officer is. When I say who, I don't mean the name of the person. I mean, where does it come from?
All right, so Tom, we'll leave it up to you to add.
Yeah, I mean,
say, just
we
say,
can
hey,
add like a as appointed by like the Board of Selectmen or something.
Perfect.
that's currently the folks that are currently appointed by the
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen.
Currently
whichever.
seated, right, or something
Okay.
like that.
And
Yeah.
then what you said in an appeals area, are you just referring again to the same person, the same issue? Or do you have different?
It only comes up in the appeals area.
Yeah, those
Paragraph 10,
two,
A and
those
B.
two, A and B are basically copy and paste. I'm pretty sure of the same, just for one for permit, one for citation.
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought you meant under enforcement, there's the authorized enforcement agency. Okay. All right. Anyone?
No.
You probably want
Yeah.
2 different people for that, right?
It's just this issue of who is the hearing officer? And I think maybe it goes over in the definition place. If you could clip the sentence out of somewhere else or whatever and plug it in where we do definitions, and then here just say hearing officer is defined, earlier or whatever. But I think I've said more than I intended to. I think when you read paragraph A and B subparagraph A and B under paragraph 10, it raises the question to the reader, who's the hearing officer? Where do you
Gotcha.
find them? Where's their office? What's their,
I understand it hasn't been referenced before in the
Yeah,
document.
right.
Okay.
That's all.
Bruce,
Anybody
you don't
else?
wanna Find out who the hearing officer is.
Pardon me?
I said, you don't want to find out who the hearing officer is.
Well, I'm thinking about everybody else. I'm not worried about me. I don't have any intention of going into the short-term rental business. I do have something
Jackie's-
else that I think I don't know if Bob will get any feedback, but I'm not 100% sure we've got this nailed where we can avoid sort of overlapping issues with the ADU regulations under the zoning regulations, because I don't want to see somebody get their STR permit revoked for being a bad citizen and then just go over to the zoning commission and apply for an ADU. And within a few weeks, they're renting the same place,
Yeah, but aren't those 2 different? I mean, an ADU is intended. I think we're trying to. The concept of ADU is entering the conversation for whether it's long-term rental or intergenerational purposes or different than the short-term rental.
No, the ADU doesn't have any sort of structure around it or wording that's associated with age or family relationships, anything like that. ADUs can be rented to anyone.
Bruce,
I get
that's
that.
next for zoning.
Pardon me? Yeah,
That's next for zoning.
well, I don't know.
Well, Mike is shaking his head.
Well, yeah, actually, little off topic, but that bill for the zoning reorg is supposed to be signed by the governor today. So we'll be talking ADUs at your next meeting, Bruce.
I thought he signed it yesterday. Was it a different zoning bill?
Was it signed yesterday? I have an email saying it was today.
Liz,
Okay.
there are quite a few though.
ADUs
different
are
bills.
Okay, yeah, I didn't,
1,000 square
A very
feet.
busy week.
Yeah.
yeah.
Not,
Very busy week.
we need to talk, Bruce.
Okay. Anything else?
I think this is a good place to refer it, and have
Yeah.
Bob G look at it.
Good. Do we, until we get, so I'm not going to propose any sort of meeting, Jackie, until what's the standard? What do we think is a fair amount of time for the folks to review Bob D's final draft? Is it 2 weeks? Is it a week? Is it a month? What's the,
Like for Bob to review it or for the work group to review his opinion?
once Bob has, so we referred this over, we've already essentially referred it over.
Mhm.
For all intents and purposes. I mean, I think there's a couple little minor tweaks here that will refer over to Bob, so to speak. Once he is complete and is ready to submit it back to us,
Who's Bob?
the town outside council.
Okay.
So
Once
Tom,
we get
is
it,
realistic that we could get together like on June 30th?
but is that enough time? My question really is, I don't know. Do we have is there a feel? I don't think there is a statutory requirement that it states we have to have a document for 2 weeks of review or whatever once it's back. I'm just saying, what do people feel comfortable? Once Bob's done and has it back to you, do you just need a week? Do you need a month? Do you need a year? What do you guys want?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay. So with that being said, I really don't know where we're going to get it. I mean, Tom, do you have any sense? You think you'd be done by the end of June? I mean, it's 2 weeks away.
Oh,
So
yeah, definitely. I would say that would be easy. And we can follow up kind of mid next week with him to see how it's coming along. And then from there, see if we can kind of get it back to us maybe by the end of next week or the week after.
okay, so let's just assume hopefully he gets it. He's done. It's back to us by Friday, June 25th. That means that we would tentatively schedule for the second week of July, which is, what is that? That's
The 12th.
the 11th. No, that's
Week of the 12th.
12th. Okay.
We
So
will.
I think,
Sorry, I believe we'll be back in person by then. We'll have to be because of the executive order. So just so people know that
okay.
So
we could do hybrid.
what's the executive order? What was that?
Hybrid, but in person. Still
The
unsure.
executive order of the governor that expires, essentially requiring everything, for all intents and purposes, require everybody to go remote. And, he can't force us to be remote anymore, that kind of thing. So,
I apologize, but can I bring one more item up? I just noticed, I think it was kind of tied into the, what I thought was the requirement for primary residency, and that's the limit in the amount of rental days being limited to 100, which is less than a third of the year. I just don't know how that fits in. Well, when I thought the person had to live there for 180 days, then it kind of made more sense, but having 2/3 of their property vacant for 2/3 of the year, I don't quite understand the purpose of that. That's item C.
So, yeah, I think from previous, that was like early 2020. So going back on memory. But I think we had that from not wanting people to just kind of rent out a house for all 365 days of the year. Just having people coming and going from the neighborhoods and all that, just to kind of preserve some of the neighborhood characteristics. So that's kind of where we landed on the 100.
Okay. Well, if it doesn't have to be occupied by primary residents for 180 days, it doesn't seem to make as much sense. If you want to put a limit on it, I'm fine with it, but 100 seems awfully thin.
Well, Ron, I mean, just like Tom said, I think we put a limit on it for that reason, for the neighborhood.
Mhm.
And for a long-term rental, somebody can rent their house for a year,
Right.
or somebody could rent their house to two people, do a 6 month and a 6 month. So there's definitely options. This is really only for the short term.
Okay. So that would allow them to rent, I guess, most weekends, and that's it.
yeah, correct. Are we really going to run up against somebody who's got that level of frequency? Is you know, are Tuesdays in February really that busy in Simsbury for short-term rentals? I don't know. So I think let's just leave it at this until we have some sort of outcry. And then again, ordinance, we can adjust as the environment dictates.
Okay.
Are we waiting to hear about the zoning, the notification zone of 100 feet? Is the lawyer responding to that?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I do think it should be bigger than that. Okay.
All right.
Mhm.
All right, folks, I think that's good. So like I said, so hopefully we'll hear something back from Bob by the end of next week, which is the 25th, and then possibly put a pin in around the week of the 9th, the week of the 9th of ending the week of the 9th of July as a possible next meeting or the following week. Okay.
Fine with me. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Oh, wait a minute. One other thing, though. You wanted, Chris, a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting,
Oh, sure. I did want one of those.
meeting of May 10th.
Can I have a motion to approve those meeting minutes?
I'll make that motion with one correction. My
Of
name
course.
is incorrectly spelled. There's 2 T's on the end. So
Uh-oh.
where my name appears, it should be corrected. And with that
All right.
changed, I moved that we.
I forgot. Yeah, I did. I always remember your jersey from having the one T at the end. Okay. Thank you, guys. If we can have a motion to adjourn then.
Second and A2 approving the minutes and motion to adjourn.
Thank you all.